We are live. Welcome to the 345th edition of the HRC, our August 8th meeting. I'll call to order. We have a second for that. We are called to order. All right. So beginning with a very simple chair's report. Are you ready, Rhonda? You're just scrambling. Are you good?
You want me to talk?
No. I was just want to make sure you were ready for the talk, taking elaborate notes.
You want me to type?
So I had a very productive meeting with Pat and Michael, thankfully, about 2 weeks ago, where they have started to bring me up to speed and gave me some ideas about, the pertinent issues and things we had to kind of be aware of and things that would help me and documents to review. So I am in process as to getting myself super educated in all things HRC. But I wanted to thank them both for that time. It's been a lovely Saturday morning.
Yeah.
And I thought one of the best things that came out of that was a discussion of us maybe having to elevate as a priority the archiving of documents. I know we've talked about that at every meeting, but do we need to start thinking more seriously about where that is, what kind of facility, if it's something that we undertake as a project to find a separate facility for archiving. And I think one of the steps of that, as Pat suggested, is maybe an all parties meeting that involves us, select board, historical society, maybe Rockport is involved in some way, but some way to make this a more active search for a way to archive documents, photographs, what have you. I mean, it's in our charter to do that, and it feels like something that, we've really struggled to find a good spot for. So that's something that I have later in the agenda is, how do we move that maybe further up the list of things we attack. And on that note, I've been fascinated with the Christian Science building because it already is conditioned for documents and what have you. It seems like nobody uses it or it's not used very often. So I actually ducked my head in and talked to some people there, and I don't know if this would be considered off the record or not, but I think they've had some preliminary talks about what to do with their buildings, and they've had a diminishing membership over the years. And so they're at a place where they're considering options. So there might be something worth talking to them about renting, leasing the library space and turning that into a public archiving facility. I walked through it, looked at it. There's lots of storage, and it seems like as opposed to a lot of spaces in town, it'd be very easy to convert into that kind of facility. It has a restroom, and that's a little reception desk. So it's just something to talk about.
So where their reading rooms to be in that?
Yeah. So
I thought that would be a really excellent idea, topic, and to get people together who all over town who are interested in having a spot like that and get them involved right from the beginning, talking about it would be great.
I think so too.
Yeah.
And then just a little fun aside, last meeting, we talked about the sign that was out at the Outlook for Curtis Island. And I talked to the Parks and Rec crew, and yes, they put that sign up, and they were really worried that it was too big. And I was like, no, it's perfect. But they were really glad that people are noticing it. And I thought that was great. So moving on to review of minutes, Rhonda sent out minutes from last meeting last week. Did anybody see any problems? Should we write that into the record, or?
Rhonda, I'm sorry I didn't bring my minutes, but there was one thing on the in the minutes about the Episcopal Church, and I think you used the word restoration, and I'll give it to you later, but it wasn't, it was demolition. It should have been demolition and rebuild, and you called it restoration in one of those sentences. Do you have your notes right there? I think
I do have right here. It's a demolition review.
Yeah.
And reports of demolition delay will run out in July. All I wanted back here in information. Where do you see restoration?
My glasses. It's hard.
Oh, tower restoration.
Oh, yeah. So it's it's where it says Pat got a call from someone who was hired to help with fundraising for the tower restoration. Wait, no, it was after that. I can do this later.
Okay.
I'll have to do it later.
Okay.
Um,
Short of that word, I think that we can approve, the meeting, notes from last time. Second, great, all right, thank you. All right, moving on from that, Allison's not here, so we'll skip the liaison's report. I'm curious if anybody though knows anything about the peer update that they talked about after. Anybody else know anything about that?
Is it tonight?
No, I think it was right after, remember she said it was the evening after our meeting,
Okay.
so we'll get an update next time she's here. I'm gonna skip committee reports, but I do want to talk about maybe starting to have specific committees, but we'll get there. Maybe we're small enough, we don't need committees, but. So moving on to old business, is there anything to update us on the budget? You know, you gave me some numbers when we spoke. But I wonder if we want to track our balance in each meeting and just kind of announce it. You don't have a number handy, do you, that we've got in our account? But I'm going to work on that. I think it'd be great to just announce what's in our balance at each meeting. Okay. Walking tour, somebody's favorite subject. What's up with the printer and all that?
well, the printer got back to me and they sent me a mock-up and it's too long. It's, well, the problem is, maybe I can show it to you. So if you can see this, you don't need to read anything, but you can see how it's laid out. And so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 8 panels, and this piece of paper will fold in half, and then it's a Z fold panel. So in such a way that you'll be able to read it from start to finish. But then we have that.
The
The
map.
map.
That was just kind of important.
So I'm trying to figure out how we could do that, because if we want it that size, we have to take up 2 full columns to do it. And, you know, we had added a column because of the forts and all. And certainly the beginning could be reduced a bit more. Maybe I don't have to put the 20 Associates map in there, although I thought
So there's
that was-
no cover on this, like.
No, it's probably the first panel will be a cover, but you know, now I have to rethink it, because now I see that how it's gonna be presented. Can you see, Chris?
So does
And-
it fold, is it printed both sides?
Yes.
Okay.
So Rhonda, just so I can understand
Oh,
too,
that's
like,
one side and that's the other side.
Yeah.
so that in each like 8.5 by 11 panel that has like a center line, is that where the crease or fold would be? So it's half of an 8.5 by 11 size. Is that it's like a elongated
No.
rectangle?
I'm assuming that they're gonna have both sides and folded, you know, organized in such a way that when it's folded, you'll be, you know, unfolding it so you can read it. It's
Right.
just that this matches nicely, and then we have an extra page which wouldn't have a back, so.
Is the
So you have
obvious
to
solution to
pay-
insert another page rather than reduce and just have that page be a graphic element or, you know, something like that?
Well, maybe you and I should talk
Okay.
about what we could, how we could rearrange this a bit.
Okay,
Either we take stuff out or we add.
okay.
And how big in terms, I'm just thinking about the typeface.
Oh, wow, that's another thing. I
Because we have
mean,
a lot.
I don't know how big this will actually be.
Yeah.
You can probably print it to any size, but I'm assuming like the old fashioned paper maps that you
Yeah.
used to have in your car.
How does it fold?
More than 2.
I'm not exactly sure, but I know that this is 2 sides. So, and we have an even number of columns, so when it folds, you'll have one whole side to read, probably in the middle, and then another whole side to read.
So if you're
So
walking the
maybe-
tour, do you have to have it all unfolded like this?
No,
I don't
Can you
think so, but it's,
Can you send that around just? so
Yeah,
we can
sure.
see it?
sure,
I mean, could you take the map and make it longer and turn it a little bit so that it takes up 2 columns?
well, one thing I was thinking was that, maybe I could make it half a page at the bottom. But then, where do I want it placed so that you can refer to it? It's gonna take a little.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if the cover is all that tight. People are so conditioned now not to, and so just to pick it up might be like, oh, it's just too much type for me,
Too many words.
Yeah, I mean, that's the way people have
Or
been
something-
conditioned by the internet, Twitter and all.
Like a title page, so.
Yeah, see, I
Yes,
figured it would be,
yes.
it would be like something very welcoming on the front, like a picture that says, oh, I need to pick this up because I want to go see that.
Yeah, maybe that's the solution,
Yeah.
an inviting cover page fills the,
And then that'll give us one more page. Okay. So this is 8 columns, and Miranda had given me a quote for 7. I think that's what she called it, 7-panel brochure. And so that quote for 2,500 was a little over $1,500, plus design and layout was another couple hundred. So I know you had asked me last time about what it was gonna cost.
What is on the front and the back side of it? If it's copied both sides,
Yeah.
which images are on the back side?
When it's all folded up.
well, see the dark line down the middle? Maybe the front side is the left-hand page and the other, right-hand page is the back side. And then when it's folded, maybe like an accordion, you can, flip the sections
Yeah,
over.
I can tell you that, oh, that's interesting. They have. Well, I mean, everything's numbered,
Mhm.
so,
That's the only way you could get it in the bag, is to do it like this.
okay, so the numbers are running across this way.
Oh,
Yeah,
that makes it difficult.
yeah.
Unless you're folding it up the other way. Well, maybe the person who's designing this has, a plan that she hasn't shared with you.
Yeah.
because I would say that, the main thing for them to, again, not seeing a mock-up and knowing exactly how it's folded, like, just having walked it and used your printout, right? Handling the paper, can be easy or it can be a little difficult, and you want to go page to page as you're progressing through the tour, right? So I just hope that the way it's laid out is in the sequence that you would actually do it in, and then you just quickly look at the map, if you're like, oh, where am I?
Well, because the numbers go this way
Yeah.
across these panels. I had pictured that the Z fold, you're gonna fold it, as you go along. You're not gonna have to open it all the way up.
Right.
I think this break here is a little confusing.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Although it looks like maybe it folds in half here and then you do the other side by
Yeah.
unfolding it one at a
Okay.
time, like a fan.
I think it should have a distinctive color, a distinctive cover
Mhm.
and something, and if you had the map right, when you folded it out, the map was below the cover. And then
Or I would even put in the cover and then the map would be on the back,
Mhm.
like I go to a
So you
lot of
just
outdoor
put that
garden
over, you
tours
see
and
the
your
cover.
map is on the back,
Yeah.
It's got a title in the beginning, as you can see, it's just Chestnut Street Historic.
Well, I like Ann's idea. If you take the map that's there and make it, just make another panel. And the map could be one panel and on the back and,
Right, so it's like.
and on the front
like a
could be
book.
your title page, like a book.
Mhm.
I don't know.
And the type, because I'm just concerned that people want to pick it up. And I did something publishing for a while, and that's the big thing. I mean, the graphic designers would just give me such hell that you've got to have something that people will pick up. If you put too many words on it, they're just not gonna do it.
You have to take a cue from romance novels and not.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I hate the fact, I
Yeah.
love words, I hate the fact that people.
Yeah, and maybe they have, like someone said, they got a copy and gets printed out and folded for me. Show me how it's gonna display.
Right, yeah. Well, it
Yes.
wasn't Miranda who did it, it was her assistant, and I haven't spoken to that person, so
Mhm.
I will.
Cool, thank you. It's looking good, though.
We're a little closer.
Yeah, yeah. All right, thank you. All right, do we have any news on the St. Thomas Bell Tower that we want to talk about?
Well, I know Ann will talk about it, but, Diane Lebson was the person that was helping them with finance, and when I gave, Ann her telephone number, Ann contacted her.
Yeah, but when you actually copied me on the email,
Uh-huh.
and I realized that she had moved here from Washington DC, the
Mhm.
Washington DC area, and so I thought, well, that's a great entree.
Yeah.
You know, so I called, I emailed her and I said, you're a fellow refugee. So I'm interested in what got you here, and we decided to meet for coffee
Mhm.
at Zeus. And which we basically spent the time talking about playing the piano, because we both play the piano.
Mhm.
But we did talk a little bit about that, and she is, she's, can't disclose much because she's, she was hired by them, but, what to me sounded really good, because this is a really important thing in a project like this.
Yeah.
They have submitted a report, and the vestry is now in the discernment period, where they try and read the report and try and make a decision. The report does include their recommendation. And I got the impression that they went, and this would be what a good fundraising consultant would do. They looked at both possibilities, tearing it down and building something else and restoring. And of course, she had been very interested in all the options for grants for restoring. I've got to tell you, she even told me that Maine has a steeple fund,
Ah,
and that there was concern that this wasn't a steeple, it was a tower. Well, we can finesse that in grant application. So what their report does is they have gone around and they have talked to all different possible funding sources. And a lot of times a report like this will even, have a dollar figure of, this is how much we think it should have. This is how much we think you can raise for restoration. This is how much we think you can raise for demolition and building. And here are some of the sources that we have found for you that we think would supply that money.
mhm.
So that then gives them the opportunity to look at it and say, aha, there's a lot more options for raising money for restoration, which is what we
Yeah.
hope.
Mhm.
And look at all these people or organizations that have said, yes, we give money for this kind of thing. And could potentially sway them to say, no, we don't want to demolish it, because
Great.
it's a lot smaller pool. And I'm just guessing that that's what it says, but we did talk about, the different funding sources that I knew about for church restoration. And she brought up the fact that there's even this Main Steeple grant program.
That's,
When you said they submitted a report, what submitted to whom?
To the vestry of St.
And who is they?
Her firm.
The
she's-
fundraiser? They
yeah.
already submitted a report.
They already
then?
submitted the report.
Okay,
that's great that the voting interests are gonna at least now have that presented as an option and see that, because it seemed like that wasn't the case before.
Yeah,
That's great
yeah,
news.
and I mean, I was telling Pat when the church I was working with was applying for the national grant that we ultimately got. And when we didn't get it, I had an hour-long conversation with the people giving the grant and said, what can we do so that we can get a favorable response next time? And it was a big thing that we had to have a fundraising consultant come in and identify and the sources of funding and what we could be expected to be able to get, because you had to have like a 250, you had to have raised $500,000 to get a $250,000 match. And I also, it's amazing what you get when you pay $40,000. Sometimes it's not so much, but I also saw the one that Broadway Church in Waldoboro did. And I've seen other sample ones, and it can really kind of lay out for you. You know, sometimes it can lay out for you, there's no sources of money here, you might as well just forget it. And other times it can be a roadmap for you. And it was instrumental in the church I was working with getting that grant, because it's considered that important that you hire a
That's
fundraising
great.
consultant.
Do we have any idea what their timetable is in terms of decision making?
No, the vestries usually meet once a month. And sometimes that's like sacred, like we'll put it on our agenda and we won't do, it's, you know, we met yesterday, we'll still wait another month to meet. I don't know what their schedule is.
You know, she's planning on circling back with you and telling you, you know, how that goes and.
I got the feeling that she would, and if she didn't,
Great.
I might just ask her, you know.
I think that's all fantastic news. I
Yeah.
think that's great progress. Thank you, Anne. That's awesome.
She's a neat person.
And on a side note too, she indicated that she would be very interested in finding out more about this committee. And that was my original conversation with her when she emailed back. And so I emailed back and I said, a wonderful way to do that is to come to some meetings, but we should add her name to a list of potential people.
Yeah, and she was very, very grateful for the Historic Resources Committee, and she was impressed with how much information it was and how eager we were to help. Diane Levson.
Lebson.
When does the
I can give
180
you
days?
her contact.
It's already run out. It's already
It
run out.
did? Was it that long ago? that we-
It ran out at the end of July.
Yeah, they could demolish.
Mhm.
Yeah, they could,
Next month.
but I'm sure that they're gonna get back
It was
to
scary
her.
already when we did that.
And I just kind of said, you know, there's other options, no matter what is decided, because sometimes we were talking about, sometimes it's just one or two people on the vestry who, you know, have convinced everybody else, and you just never know if you put some facts in front of them that you change people's minds.
That's great. That's really good news.
Mhm.
Okay, moving on. Curtis Island, and I know Michael, you have a PowerPoint. Do you want me to bring that up? now, or-
No, that's a different one. Let's see. The roof is on hold. I think, not much has been done. I mean, there hasn't been much forward movement, in terms of the town saying it will be done this year. Nothing has happened. I think on the 16th of the month, FEMA is coming to do an assessment, and they're going to be on the island. And the idea was, let's not fix it before then. And didn't appear to be any way to do that anyway. I was out there a couple of weeks ago with another consulting group, or another contracting group, and just trying to get an idea on prices, because the initial price went from 50,000 to 100.
110.
And so anyway, we're looking at that. Don't have anything definite back. I did get a report just yesterday from the State Historic Preservation Commission. And I spent the morning out there with them. We didn't go into the house itself, but so it does caution about that in the report. And it's basically an email that talked about the conditions on the various, various buildings. And I had sent him the conditions assessment that was done by Gartley and Dorsey a couple of years ago. And so that helped him track, and basically if I were to summarize it, the Gartley and Dorsey assessment is still right on target. He took a lot of pictures, and I'm going to try to get the pictures because those will help us
That's
going
Michael
after
Johnson.
grants. That's Michael Johnson from the state.
Mhm.
So I'm going to try to get all the pictures he took, because he had a good camera and he was focused in on issues. So they would agree to synthetic, some of the trim being synthetic, the gutters, places that are so hard to get to,
Yeah.
as long as they conform aesthetically and design wise, like the crown moldings, they have crown, gutters were a form of crown molding. And so companies have reproduced those New England crown moldings
Okay.
that would line up and work on that project.
Because I know you said the big hurdle was the customization of molding and flashing, but it seems like
Yeah.
there might be other options.
Yeah, and he's not saying necessarily stay with that flashing. One of the concerns is that it just puts a lot of water, makes a water streak right down the edge. So there's still work to be done. And I don't think anything's going to happen this year other than a new patch put on. He did say that the patch on that, whatever it is, the material that patching with, there are X's where you need to nail it with special nails with rubber gaskets. You've seen those, Chris, and they weren't done on they were done every other one. And he said that's why it's ripped, what's there is start to rip off. So the patch will be restored this fall. I was in the house about a week and a half ago. I'm in the caretaker's cottage, and it doesn't appear as though there's been any other water damage. That was my main concern.
Yeah.
So that patch has shed water, and where it was dropping down on the staircase ceiling, some of the plaster had released. Didn't look like there was anything fresh there. And we've had some pretty tough rains too, since the covering was put up. He thought the place was in really great structural condition, so it's more the paint and getting rid of some of the rotted places. He thought the staircase was just incredible. And so there's a whole lot inside the building that just needs to be refinished.
Yeah.
And the outside, replace rotted areas. I think it's still out whether you put up new clapboards and finish boards, or if you sand, and most of the contractors would say, don't sand, replace it. It's going to be in your best interest. The state is saying, hey, it may work for a couple of years, may give you a little advantage, but those new clapboards aren't the old growth pine that they were using before, or cedar or whatever. So that question is still out there, and we need to do some more work on it.
Okay. Can I ask, you had mentioned last meeting about wanting to get on the select board agenda.
Yeah.
Is that something?
That it hasn't happened, and the foundation that's been formed will be meeting in the next few weeks, and that will be one of the agenda items. And so I think that needs to be coordinated, or talking to Audra, when does she want something too?
Yeah.
And that'll be a question for her. I posed it before. I haven't had a direct date.
And then you also, as a fun aside, you talked about locating the bell.
Oh,
Is that something that are we gonna try and actively get the bell back to the island, or you just?
did you all hear that? I'd done the story, and we did find the bell. I can't remember the one that belongs to us.
Mhm.
Uh, So haven't moved that forward, but that's a trip that I want to take over
Yeah,
and look at it, talk to people that own it and see what might be available.
great.
But certainly would love to have that bell back.
Yeah, yeah. Anything else? Are we good?
No, a lot of people are on the island. I mean, every time I've been out there.
I have a friend and all that. He's a great sailor, and he had a Facebook photo of the island and the lighthouse and all that. So I wrote him a note saying that there is a movement or there's a preservation movement to restore the island and all that. And I said, stay tuned and get involved or something.
Oh, okay.
And he said, oh, that's great. I'll keep an eye on it. Robin White, I don't know. He's an author and he used to be an NBC News correspondent.
What's his name?
Robin,
Robin White, he's a writer now. He writes very nice books
oh, good.
about
Wow.
the Caribbean and slavery.
That's pretty cool.
But anyway,
Any Mount Betty plaque news?
Well, just things are still moving there. The plaque has now been ordered. It's going to cost $416. Delivery in about 6 weeks, they said, and that was toward the end of July.
Mhm.
So it should be here, and Bob Williams has agreed to set it in the stone. It should be here in time in September. I hope I think Bob will get it done in September and ready for the governor's visit in October. So everything's moving slowly. It's just when are the bronze people going to get it back to us?
Do we know when in October that is? Do we have a date?
I can ask Sunshine.
Should we be doing anything? I know we wanna we throw out the idea of some kind of
Publicity.
ribbon cutting thing. Is there? I don't know. Is that something that there should be just some discussion about, like
Yeah.
calling attention to that? I don't know.
I think announcing the sign, I mean, they're gonna be announcing and showing the whole area that's been redone with accessible wheelchair
Walkways.
accessible walkways coming up to the tower itself from the parking area.
Well, we could have a separate announcement that the plaque is ready and it will be there at the time when the governor's here. I mean, we could do a blurb and.
And then maybe during that presentation, that can be noted as well, whoever's presenting or talking.
Mhm. So
Just think-
let's keep our eye on
Yeah.
that for September.
Yeah, plaque unveiling.
Yeah,
Big. All right.
okay.
Historic fire district.
Okay, and that's kind of the same thing. Everything moves slowly.
Yeah.
So the PDFs of the photos, Mike finally got the PDFs of the photos that we wanted to use for the plaque from Ken.
Mhm.
And those have been, the text and the PDFs have been sent to Adventure Advertising now. So they have everything. They're going to organize it. Mike has made some slides to show you.
Oh, great.
So we need kind of everybody to read it today and say, yeah, that sounds good.
Okay.
Or, oh, there's a mistake in that
So you
text.
want me to screen share now?
Yeah.
Yeah,
We're gonna screen share the plaque here.
and while they're doing that, the Camden National Bank, finally, the maintenance man did get in touch with the HVAC man who put in the sidewalk warming, and they said, yes, we could put the plaque there. But they would have their HVAC person on site to make sure we didn't puncture anything, so that's good. Everything takes so long by the time people get to someone, and they get to someone, and then they get back to you, but yes, it's. Whoops, so that's one of the pictures that's going to be on the plaque.
Okay.
And you can see it up there as well. So,
This is hard to
What?
understand.
yeah, so I'm just showing parts, the pictures that will be on the plaque, and then I'll have a picture of a mock-up of a plaque that I've done. So, this is sort of the largest picture, but it shows, I didn't have, the words won't be on it, but this is Montgomery Dam. And this part of the dam, where you see the mechanism, that's the gate that opens up and that's still there.
Hmm.
And the other side is the perpendicular side that runs sort of perpendicular to Main Street. And it's where the big falls is when there's a lot of water coming over near the parking lot, near the public
So
land.
that dam goes toward the public landing. This dam over here comes toward the
And
library.
what you see is the bridge is where, now there are houses over it that actually weren't there before. Some weren't there before, but that now hang out over this area.
You don't mean
And I had
houses, you mean the stores.
The stores, yeah.
Stores, yeah.
But the bridge kind of, all the stores kind of hide the bridge.
So are we talking about right opposite the library, basically there? Is that what we're talking about? That overhang?
This picture would be taken from sort of the
Harbor Park.
library lawn.
Mhm.
And
So what's the steeple and, what church is that?
Baptist Church.
That,
which one?
no, I think that might
Back
be,
is the kind
There
of-
aren't any other steeples.
that might be the Congo Church.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I
the,
forgot about the.
Yeah, because the other church burned.
right, yeah, and that's the right
Okay,
direction.
that orients it, yeah.
So this is Route 1. See the bridge? That's Route 1 in French and Braun would be right down in this corner.
Got it, okay.
And Camden National Bank would be right here.
Oh, wow.
These buildings are gone now.
Yeah,
They didn't
yeah.
burn, but they're.
That was a hotel,
Which was on the village green.
which
It's
on,
on the
village
green,
green, yeah.
So when you say this would be on the plaque. It's
Well,
like
you'll see it in a
collage.
second.
Okay,
So
sorry.
Yeah.
I just,
Should I move forward?
yeah.
Yeah.
And so this is a map that was done, what is it called?
The insurance maps
Sanborn
that they
Insurance.
did, this
Yeah.
was
Sanborn
eighteen ninety-two.
There's,
Sanborn, yeah. And this is actually 1886, I think, because I wanted to see what was there, what burned,
Mhm.
okay?
really good, you got it.
So then I've highlighted all of these, those are the ones that burned. There were 41 buildings that burned.
So everything in that trapezoid,
What is on the corner of Main and Mechanic there? What in the little V?
Main and
Track.
Mechanic.
Right here?
Yeah, what does that say?
Oh, that's that, the
Well,
Adams building?
The Adams building is there now.
Yeah, but what was
But
there?
it was, I think that was an inn at the
It says
time.
jewelry.
Yeah,
Um,
And so Washington Street is Church Street?
Wow,
Yeah.
okay,
Washington
Yeah.
Street.
that's
Yeah.
great.
So
It was Church.
Oh, that's,
down on the
Yeah.
dock area,
Mhm.
none of that burned.
Yeah.
And that was where a lot
see,
of the
there was a church
manufacturing
there.
here, but everything burned and this is where the town office is, that all burned.
That was McGuntacook Hall at the time. That was a community hall, McGuntacook Hall, and where the Opera House is now. And then to the left of that was a rooming house called, can't remember the name of it right now. But it was an inn or a rooming house.
The Freemasons had their chapter building in there somewhere too, didn't they?
They had a lodge there,
Yeah.
right?
It's interesting that it's a carriage shop where the library is.
What was
There
your
was
question?
there was a
There's no
livery
library.
on the library.
What's that?
A livery.
And at the, do you see where the Crook and McGuntacook Street is?
Mhm.
That big building.
Oh,
Right,
yeah.
no, on the inside, that was called the Johnson Knight Building, and that was built like in 1888, and it, you know, the fire was 92, and so that was gone. And right across the street was a livery on the Maguntacook River, that was a livery stable too,
And this,
Lots of liveries.
yeah. Anyway, it's kind
so
of,
they're going to,
Think of parking garages.
Yeah,
back in the day.
exactly.
yeah,
I see like 4 liveries.
but anyway, I think it's kind of interesting to see them lit up.
Yeah,
and they're going to, I'll work with them, and this is my cut at it. And I can see that when this went together, it shifted because all the yellow, orange is a different layer.
Mhm.
And I read Robinson and Robinson gave really good description of what burned and how far. So I read Robinson to make sure that we got all the buildings that burned.
So this is a totally silly input thing, but when I think fire, I think red. Would it all make sense to put instead of yellow, use red?
Because my first one had flames on it. each-
Oh,
Yeah, and we'll.
we can
we'll
do any
work.
color,
yeah.
we can do red.
All right, should I advance?
Yeah, move on.
Okay, so
Oh, my
this,
lord.
this picture is to where this picture will be placed.
Where the plaque will be placed.
Oh, that's
Is
great.
the same view
Yeah.
as what this, you'll be looking down Main Street,
Yeah.
not seeing oxen, but seeing
Uh-huh.
campers.
This is like from Camden National Bank
Uh-huh.
looking.
Looking up to.
Up toward
towards
your,
High
up
Street.
toward your house.
Nice.
Your
Wow.
hot,
So
your
this
house.
is the other verse of it.
Yeah,
Yeah, that is looking back.
yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Next,
Okay,
Uh,
so
Do you want to read it, Pat?
maybe just read it to yourself and see what you think.
well, for the viewers at home, I'll read that out just for
Okay.
fun. Camden Great Fire Historic District. The Great Fire started November 10th, 1892, around 1 a.m. in the GOH Cleveland Building on Main Street. Driven by fierce easterly wind from the bay, the fire devastated both sides of Main Street and parts of Elm, Washington, and Mechanic Streets in a spectacular conflagration which consumed everything in its path. It destroyed entire business blocks, the Methodist Church, a large community hall, and the fire station, ironically. Fortunately, a snow squall started shortly after the fire began, covering the roofs of buildings and preventing much greater loss. Although assisted by neighboring departments, the Camden Fire Department was not equipped to handle a fire of this size. When morning arrived, 40 buildings housing 60 businesses lay in ruins and 18 families were left homeless. Remarkably, there were no deaths and none of the large manufacturing businesses was lost or were lost.
Was,
Okay,
none,
yeah.
it's
None,
just
Yeah,
singular.
okay. However, losses exceeded hundreds of thousands of dollars. I wonder what that would be in today's dollars.
Yeah.
Camden business owners and townspeople quickly responded to rebuild. By 1893, most of the burned and temporary wooden buildings had been replaced by new brick structures reflecting the community's grit and optimism for the future of their small town. Wonderful.
And so think about, is there any question that you have that you think a tourist would say, we didn't answer? Is there any question for you that
And we
pops
have
up?
limited real estate
Hmm.
to add.
The only thing was the aside I said, I'd be curious what that was in today's dollars. I don't know why it's always like a sexy thing, but.
I'm always interested in what started it.
What started
What
it?
started it, yeah.
It was never determined, but they think it was a heating apparatus in the basement of the Cleveland building, but it was never, the source of the fire was never.
So you.
Even noting that the source was never, I think that's a great point. I would wonder that too. I wonder if the gal kicked over the lantern.
And the Cleveland building is which one now?
Well,
Isn't it
I
where
always
the
thought,
village
Don't ask.
I always thought it was on the right-hand side of Main Street, you know, where the alley is between Sea Dog. I always thought it was 3 or 4 buildings up on the right, but it's on the left.
It's on the left, because I
Yes.
always thought it was the village shop.
Yeah,
What
Well,
used to be.
I did too.
I think, well, we're gonna ask Ken Rose to validate it.
Yeah.
Because
It says
Rule
Robinson
Robinson.
says it was on the east side of Main Street.
which is the ocean side.
But when you look at the maps, the George H. Cleveland building was on the west side of Main Street. So either Robinson was wrong or it didn't start in the Cleveland building. But it's definitely a discrepancy. That's why I didn't say on the east side of Main Street or the west. Because I believe it did start in the Cleveland building. That's well documented in lots of places. But the Cleveland building was not on the east side of Main Street. It was on the left.
So we're gonna
It's-
validate that.
Yeah.
But I guess that what I was saying is that, you know, in parentheses, if you said now such and such number Main Street or something,
Oh,
because a lot of
okay.
times people just want to go, oh, that's where it started,
Oh, okay.
you know?
So I'd say there are 3 things to consider. That address, that there is no identified source of the fire.
Okay. Yeah.
And if you want some translation of those dollars in today's dollars, but I don't know. if
Say, what was the last thing?
A translation of that dollar amount in today's dollars, maybe that's superfluous. But I think those are 3 good ideas.
Okay.
And then here, the editor is jumping out.
And the
Just-
color,
Yeah.
the red.
1 AM, is that the, do you
It's
want to
such a-
punctuate it?
You know,
It's-
I wanted to limit it.
Just capital
I put
AM.
Capital A, capital M, and it just stuck
Yeah,
right out.
I like it better like that,
Yeah.
but that did jump out at me
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
well, but I don't, I think it's probably good. And it kind of, to me, when I went on and you had two other abbreviations, I was much more comfortable because it was it's just a stylistic thing for me.
Well, in all the history books of that time, they put George as GEO, and I said to Mike, should I say George H. Cleveland? That's his
No, I
name,
think
or should I
that's-
put GEO?
I
And
think that's
the
appropriate.
history books
Yeah.
used that, so I said, I'm gonna go with that.
And one more detail. I think I'm noticing a double space after the word size, the period there, as opposed to single space after other periods.
I think you are.
After where, which was?
After the fire of this size.
And it's
Oh,
also
okay,
double
yeah.
space.
Oh, yeah.
So it looks like some of the periods have double spaces after them and some are single
Okay.
space. So I would go to single space.
I'll take that.
And then last one, do you want to consider justifying the text, or do you think it looks better
Yeah,
unjustified?
okay.
And that's where,
I would prefer that.
I have one grammarian for grammarians.
I think it's just-
This one has always got remake.
Which one?
I'll try it both ways.
And none of the large manufacturing businesses was lost or were lost.
Was.
It was because the none.
I never believed in that
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
Anyway,
My-
and also another thing is historically, that was a very good time to have a fire. Because the United States or the world really was in great financial times, it's go time and all that, so they could rebuild the buildings better at that,
Mhm.
during that time. Because
Than the earlier.
and there was a financial crisis going on at the time too, and they.
Oh, it was that,
There's a
that
panic of
early? Oh, I thought it was.
something
Well,
like
I
it.
think I read that recently.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's all.
Were you
I
able to
got.
get
I
this?
got
Okay,
one
great.
other thing. Oh, one other thing.
Jeff, don't ever ask this.
No, I
kind of
think
thing,
it's
especially if you've
good.
got editors in the room.
Yeah.
Most of the burned and temporary wooden buildings, and my mind just like. They were temporary wooden buildings, and I'm assuming you mean they put up temporary wooden buildings,
Mhm.
but that just flashed in my mind. exactly
Yeah,
what
it is a
that
little
means.
confusing.
Yeah,
Well, it says they had been replaced, most of the burned and temporary wooden buildings.
by 1893,
Right.
but I mean, I had to think to say
Mhm.
temporary, they must have been temporary wooden buildings that were put up after.
Yeah,
the
it seems
fire.
a little bit like a superfluous detail. I think you could just go from most of the burned buildings at one place, but I don't know if you need that.
Yeah,
Would
you
you
might
leave,
even,
leave off the temporary?
you might,
buildings?
Yeah.
you might not even need and temporary wooden.
Yeah, that's what I'm
Most of the
saying,
burned
just
Buildings
your-
have been replaced.
Okay,
That will save you a little space.
same, yeah,
Yeah.
save us money.
And was there a fact about the bricks too? Like they were part of the story, the bricks were manufactured locally. I mean, there was brick making going on here even
Yeah.
before the fire. Yeah.
There was brick making going
Yeah.
on, but
You know, I've been wanting to study that. Find out
And also-
where the brickyards were. Where the clays came from.
well, I know a couple of the wooden buildings never got replaced, where Goods is now.
Mhm.
There,
Mm-hmm.
those were supposed to be temporary.
Interesting.
Is George Cleveland building, is that on the Sanborn map? The fire map?
They
Yeah,
don't have
no,
the
no.
names on the Sanborn map. They have what business was in there. And actually, it did say that in that building, they had 4 different things: jewelry, millinery. 4 different things that Mr.
Cigars.
Cleveland sold in that store, not he himself, but they were. And that's what it says on the map, on the Osborne map. It lists all 4 of the things that the narrative says that he had going on in the building. So I'm pretty sure his building was on the west side. I think Rural Robinson mixed up.
How could
East
he
and
get
west.
that wrong?
I don't know. Could he?
All right, should I go on to the next slide?
Yeah.
Next slide.
So that's,
Oh, beautiful.
So that's what I have.
that's what we gave,
Gorgeous.
but we can
Oh, my God.
correct these.
That
I
is
think the orange is easier red than red would be.
Hmm. I agree.
And so
Really fast.
this is the
replacing.
same style of the entrances to the historic district, so basically use that same.
This thing has taken so long to do, I can't tell you. I spent all day yesterday rewriting what we had written before. It's like, I can't believe I spent the whole day on it. So I'm glad to have the suggestions, but I think, whatever we do is good at this point.
I think that's really
I
cool, the way
noticed-
that the sign can be at that point, at that place on the street. And just,
Yeah, so you can look
Yeah.
up the street.
and see, and I to look to your left and.
Flip to the next picture.
Can I think, so
Can I make one comment about this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before? It's probably perfect as it is, but I just wonder one little thing, because it is such a great detail that picture captures your view from the sign, and I'm glad that you say from this location. Do you just want to add view up Main Street before just so you have some orientation? Because at that juncture, you might not be sure which road you should be looking up to match.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of obvious that it is an uphill slope, but
That's a good suggestion.
yeah.
I realized that you say the Great Fire started November 10th, 1892. And now I noticed by 1893, most of the buildings had been replaced. I wonder if that calls for a month, because by 1893 could be like 2 months later. Because 1893 is January, that's January 1893 is 2 months later. So it really doesn't tell me the story by saying by 1893.
How would you say it? By the end of 1893?
Well, do you know?
I'm sure they all run different schedules, right?
Yeah.
So you can't.
Well,
Because I don't know, it just.
A good guess would be by the end. of
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Yeah, it just kind of jumped
out.
out at me that doesn't carry as much weight when you look at the fact that
Yeah.
that's just 2 months after the fire.
yeah.
Like a year later.
Yeah, or by the end of 1893, I think we'd take care of that just fine.
Okay.
And that would just take back the words that we took out, So,
Okay, yeah. I have no idea how much this is gonna cost, but it won't be in bronze, so it won't
Looks
be,
really good.
it won't be.
It'll be like one of those laminated
Yeah.
signs, yeah.
It's so nice, you guys. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. It's wonderful.
And I've asked them to, if they've got
Suggestions.
graphic artists, fix it up. Sometimes you can fuzz the edges up and it's not quite as hard. I mean, the square pictures.
Maybe you'd get the Camden Volunteer Fire Department to give a little donation to.
Hey, good idea. That's a good idea. And originally, after it's up there where it says placed in the National Register, placed on the National Register of Historic Places in 2007, I had put a sentence which said why the Maine Preservation Commission wanted this to be a historic district. I can't remember what it said, but it was because they valued the Romanesque and the two different kinds of architecture of the period. And then I thought, but that's not what people are interested in. They're interested in the story of the fire. So I took that out.
I think that's a wise edit.
Rhonda taught me that when we were talking about her map. They're not so much interested in the architecture as they are the people.
We are, but they aren't. Yeah.
Right.
It
All
takes
right.
too much time to
Next
analyze
slide.
architecture.
Yeah, that's it.
And so that's what it will
Kind of.
look
that
like.
is
That's
so
in the
great.
corner.
That's really cool.
Mhm.
It's gonna be on a 7x7 granite post with a cut at a 30 or 40 degree angle.
Mhm.
And you can step off. One of the problems, this just photoshopped in, that exists up there.
Uh-huh.
And so we may do a little with the stone.
Yeah.
But anyway, Camden National Bank is very gracious to
Mhm.
give us that spot.
Mhm.
And it'll keep people also from jamming up the corner. I didn't want it so much on a corner.
On
So
the
people
street.
are stopping, they've got
Mhm.
cars wondering, are they crossing or not?
Mhm.
This is back just enough,
That's
but it
great.
does look right up there.
Oh, it is perfect. Yeah.
Well, thank you for the.
Yeah.
comments.
Nice job, everyone.
That's a good point about it not being by the crosswalk.
Mhm.
We're
Yeah.
gonna stop the screen
I
share.
still want to add any confusion there. So I was supposed to get a price for the post today or.
Well, we've
a
been
month
waiting
ago,
for it
2
for a
months
month.
ago.
Mike's reminded them 3 times, you haven't given me the price back for the post. And again today, so. yeah. You wait and wait. Okay, that's,
Good feedback,
Yeah.
thank you.
hmm,
I said that was good feedback on the
yeah,
post.
In my Zoom here. Zoom, it stops screen share. I think it- Okay, we're back on. All right, so historical preservation ordinance update. So we have a meeting on Thursday, the 24th at 10 a.m. I know there's some discussion of moving it to 4 p.m., but I think the consensus is everybody more people can make it in the morning than the afternoon. So it's gonna be at 10 a.m. and you had a conflict, right?
Right,
Maybe you can come to the first hour. You said you conflict at 11 or
I
first
come
half
the
hour?
first half hour,
Oh,
yeah.
okay. And the library asked that we come at 10 rather than 9:30, so it's at 10 a.m. And Ken will not be there, unfortunately. He's on vacation at that week. But we'll be upstairs in the library. So if there's any draft text that can be shared in advance, that would be great, so we can all come with specific comments. I'm gonna be getting you onto my draft text in the
Okay.
next day or two.
Okay,
And, you know, seems like we've all looked at other towns' historical ordinances kind of on our own, but I wonder if anybody in reviewing other town ordinances could maybe, as you're doing that, pull like 1 or 2 best practices or, you know, a really salient thing you saw that worked well, so that we can bring all these things together in a document of like, these are the 8 to 10 things we found in other towns that we should make sure is in ours. So we've just kind of anecdotally talked about good things we've seen, but if you can just pull a very specific thing that might be a best practice for us, that would be great when looking at other town ordinances. Does anybody else want to say anything about that ordinance at this point? We did get a lot of people saying they wanted to help with that, so I think once we get our draft text, maybe we move on to bringing in some volunteers to help with it.
mhm. I have a little bit of a problem with sending the draft by the 19th, and the reason is I'm not sure that what I'm coming up with is what other people are thinking of.
Mhm.
But
And
I'll
maybe
send
just
it
outline
out and,
just like kind of ideas that you're thinking.
yeah, and that's, yeah,
Just anything for us to react to, just,
Yeah.
it can just be,
okay.
yeah.
And I also have a lot of questions about, am I supposed to include the people who have Camden landmark plaques? I think that's something that the committee has to decide.
Okay.
Are they going to be governed by this local ordinance
Yeah.
or not? And if so,
Bring
how are
your
we gonna deal
questions
with
and we'll
that?
just
Okay.
brainstorm.
yeah,
through
and
everything.
even on your draft, just, you know, like, you can bold and put a question
Put in
mark
red.
here, put it in parentheses and say, this brings up the question, but.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we're gonna have so many meetings about this text, so
okay.
it's just getting it going.
Yeah, I also don't think we're gonna make any kind of fall deadline. It's,
No, I think we're talking about next year.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Okay, so moving on to new business, I know we're at 5:05, so we'll try and do this real quick. So yeah, in the agenda, I just made a little table of my understanding of people's membership status in the committee. And Pat has already given me more information, but I just wanted each of you to tell me what your understanding is when your term ends, and if you've done 2 terms. I just want to clean this up and clean it up on the town website. So, Chris, just starting with you, when do you think your term ends?
Whatever it says there.
There's 2 pieces of information, so I'm gonna go with what Pat says, and so you have it as ending in 2005, is that what you have?
Yeah, 2000. 2025.
Okay,
Mine got all mixed up.
Yeah.
Because right at the COVID thing.
I think they're all mixed.
I had to renew and.
Yeah.
and it never-
Okay.
It's supposed to be 3 years.
3 years, but see, Chris, I have history here saying you were renewed in 21 till 21, and then 3 more years would have been 24. But Janice has you at 25, so we'll go with 25. If you're good with that.
and this is your third term, is that correct? This,
I'm in my second.
you're in your second now, okay. All right, and
This is spelled
This
with
is
an AI.
what's that?
It's spelled with an AI, not an EI. The original German is EI.
Mhm.
So, I mean, I'm just,
No, that was
That's
just
Janice
straight-
put it.
That was like straight
That
cut and
was-
paste from the website.
yeah.
So it should
Well,
be,
usually it's Wakeland. That's the more common spelling. And it's just WAI. And I don't think I was informed that I was a member until 2022, because it just sat there for so long. Because we didn't do anything in 2021, did we? I mean, I think we were still not doing much meeting.
Yeah, I don't know when you, I don't know when you went on, to tell you the truth. I just,
should we work with this date because that's what Janice says it
Yeah.
is, or?
Yeah, I mean, I
Janice and I just differ on so many, so we just take whatever.
yeah, because it just sat there, remember, it sat there forever, because I
Yeah.
thought we put it in right before the pandemic.
Yeah.
And is this
It
your
sat
first
there
or second?
forever.
First,
Yeah, it did sit there forever.
yeah,
Well, let me tell you where I'm heading with this.
Yeah.
I kind of want to, I'm gonna keep going around. I want to kind of get an agreement on when everybody's term ends. And because there was so much confusion with COVID and the committee basically didn't function for a year, it doesn't seem right to penalize people for inaction of the committee. So what I was going to suggest is essentially move everybody's term date, even though it's not staggered, to 25, because we're really talking about 24, 25. And basically, we, the committee, approve these new term ends and approve if Chris is in his has already served 2 terms, to approve that a 3rd term, and because the bylaw says 2 terms.
2 terms, but.
So I just want to kind of like approve that as a group.
So would
So-
you say that again? What
So
what about the 2 terms?
what I'm suggesting is let's move Ann's termination to 25,
Ah.
because there is confusion because the committee effectively didn't meet. And let's approve Chris for a 3rd term. And then confirm Rosalie's end date. And then when is my turn again? That's something else has to be worked out, because
She had,
technically I'm taking Will's place and Will's term ends next year. But that seems really weird that my term would only be 1 year then. So,
and see, that's not fair, because we've never done that before, said, oh, this person is
It's like
taking
a-
someone's place.
yeah.
It's always
Bill
been
didn't come in until 2022.
yeah, but see, what, in the past, we've never done that.
Yeah.
It's always like when someone was appointed, they were
Yeah.
appointed for 3 years.
Exactly.
So I don't think that,
Is there a problem with staggering it? Why does it all have to be the same date?
oh, well, I
it
would,
should be staggered.
I would be 26.
Yeah,
I was gonna get to you. So Rhonda, yours 25 years. Do you think that's correct?
yes, because I was here last year.
Okay, and this is your first term, right?
Yes.
Okay.
But she had 24, but anyway.
And Rosalie, do we have any idea when she's supposed to be?
Rosalie her term expired in 22. And if they,
So if it was renewed, it would be expiring in 25.
yeah, it would expire in 25, but Rosalie, you never know. I think she was.
So even if we didn't do any modification, right, we don't really have a stagger right now. We have 24, 3 25s, and then 126.
That would work.
So, and then, okay, and we'll just renew and next year and then,
Better wait and see if she
But-
does the Jacobs Avenue.
But I think you have to go before the select board and say,
this is what we're
this is
proposing.
what we're proposing because of COVID.
Yeah,
this is how we would like the terms to end,
Okay,
because we can't just arbitrarily give ourselves.
yeah, sure.
Dates.
So then, Pat and Michael and BD are
Volunteers.
moving or to volunteers after just, that really just stood out to me meeting with Pat, just how much both of you have done for this committee. And so much of it is, I think, even though I wasn't here, probably thankless work. So I just want to thank you on behalf of the committee and the town, because you've just done so much. And so I also think it's generous of you to maintain a volunteer position. So thank you so much. And then I think with the new people who have approached us, we'll fill the 2 alternate slots with 2 new people. I'm going to try and have those be younger people. And then what we'll do is have people serve for a year, and then they would move into permanent spots as they vacate or if they vacate. But I think it's good to get some people on board and do that.
Yeah, and I'd like to plug in for volunteers. That's what I've been, and I feel like, you know, it's a position where you can work on a project, and especially if people that might be more interested in one thing or another. Being on the committee, you can have your own influence on the committee in terms of, you know, advancing an agenda that you think is important, and it's up to the committee finally, but I've always felt welcomed to the committee, and so I would certainly not disregard volunteers.
No, it's great. So what I'll do is I'm going to work with Pat and Janice, firm this up. Then at the next meeting, I'll present to everybody. If everybody approves, then we'll take it to the select board for them to approve. Sound good? Okay. All right. I'm going to move through this quickly.
Has anybody talked to Allison about this?
Not yet, no. So I have gotten some recommendations from people for which people to approach for new membership. So I've sent out a few emails, but I'm going to keep following up with that. So I'll update you as potential new members, both to the committee as alternates and to our ordinance committee as we, whenever it is that we form that. So in talking to both of you and Allison at our last meeting, you know, it seemed imperative to get fiscal proposals to the town really early. And I'm wondering, do we foresee any fiscal needs for the committee coming down the road that we should be thinking about bringing to the town's attention? And I'm thinking specifically, if we were talking about a lease program for an archiving location, or if we were talking about document storage, or if we're talking about archiving software, where we could start to archive our software, those are things that I don't know whether that process would be to have the town fund those things, or if those funds would be available. But that seems like something we should kind of talk about to be able to get that to the town or to the select board.
And I think part of it would be educating the select board on the need for it. But the actual, when the dollars have to be in, I think it's probably at the beginning of the year. Wouldn't you say, Chris, when they start putting stuff into the budget, when they start putting money into the actual budget, is that like in January or February?
It's the fiscal schedule.
Yeah. And
That goes the first of the year.
my thinking is it's sort of first or early in the year. But now's a good time to be talking about it and saying, putting some dollar figures and what do we need to do to socialize that information.
So maybe offline, I would like to talk about how we would move forward with the idea of finding a space. I really like the idea of trying to coordinate an all parties meeting with the select board and the historical society. But we can maybe talk offline about how we would try and make that meeting happen. And that could lead into a budget conversation. Okay.
I'm just thinking, if we had an archiving location, I think I talked the last time about Mark Ingraham, who has all of his father's papers. A lot of really good, I mean, there's a lot of stuff, and you'd have to have somebody kind of go through it all, but still, I know they're looking for a place to house that, and it's a lot of history of Canton in there.
Well, what I've talked about with Ken, and it's such a crude idea, and he's kind of done it himself, but it feels like he could use an assist from us. I would love for there to be some kind of community archiving program, and I don't know how we would brand it, how we would get it out to the town, but I would love for there to be an easy way that people who have lived in this town for multiple generations have a way of donating photographs or historically significant documents that could be digitized, or if they're permanently donating, stored, but at the very least start creating a digital archive of all the things that are going to be lost, and even a way to create oral history so that somebody could record particular anecdotes or stories as the population of the town ages, and those people are no longer can tell their stories. It would be so great to archive audio clips of people telling these significant stories of Canton. I just ran into a guy at the at Lake Beach last week who was telling me what it was like the day that the victory in Pacific in World War II, what that was like, and what it was like when the bomb was dropped. We were talking about the Oppenheimer film. And he talked about people walking onto the streets and the discussions that were happening on the streets. Those discussions don't happen now because we all get our news through social media and online, what have you, and we don't step into the streets and talk to one another. But I just found it fascinating. I was like, there's a story that's gonna just kind of disappear. And he also talked about the time the plane crashed in the harbor, which I didn't know anything about that. Anyway, just I think it would be really fantastic to develop some way that the community knows how to archive these personal histories.
It has to be, I don't know what you call it, not a foundation, but it would be able to legally receive documents from donation from a donor or family. And also the mechanism of controlling it. How many people would be allowed in there, and who'd have the keys, and also would have to be a person to manage it, which would be a fun job.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a really interesting conversation to have. Where is this place? What does it do? How open to the public? All these things. I think it'd be amazing. Pat just inspired me by saying,
We should
22
buy
a
that
house.
house.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, well, that is a fantastic idea, but are there also other locations, especially centrally located, like, just Christian Science? Anyway.
Well, I come from a family that we had no idea how much stuff was up in our attic, including a 1770 land grant from King George III.
Wow.
And I just tend to think that, even in houses that have changed hands, there's just nooks and crannies that have stuff like this, and it would be a lovely thing to even have this and then be able to have an outreach and help people
Absolutely.
search, because
Absolutely.
sometimes they know there's something, and I'm not going in that basement, or I'm not going in that attic.
Well, also most of the people,
Unbelievable what we would find.
yeah, and also most of those people who have those shoe boxes in the attic and know about them don't know how to run a scanner, or don't know how to, really archive that. And if that was a community service, I think it would be fantastic.
I was researching this guy in Charlotte, North Carolina, because he had used the same architect as the church I was working on. And I went to the Charlotte General Library and I talked to their archivist. I went to Davidson College Library because the guy had gone there. And I went to the guy who'd written a book that all included quotes from this man's diary. And that's all we have. And so there was something that said something like Monks, Mississippi. So I looked up the name in Monks, Mississippi, and there was a real estate agent. And so I just called him. He had the same name as Carson. And I called him and I explained what's going on. He said, my mother lives with me now, and we have boxes of stuff in the closet. Let me see what's in there. They've never looked at this. He goes in there, they had the entire diary. He said, would you like me to copy it for you? I said, I wouldn't mind that at all. And so he sent me the whole diary, and then I asked his permission to be able to copy it and send it to the Davidson Archives and to the Charlotte General Library Archives in his name and say that he and his mother had, donated this. It was just in a box in his.
I think there are some oral histories written down, stored in the history.
There are.
Center, yeah,
And some
I think
recorded
I've seen
ones
them
too,
online.
and some recorded ones too.
Yes,
And Mark Ingram's father has a lot of that had a lot of that kind of thing too.
Just quickly, I was at my 60th high school reunion this last weekend, and one of my classmates' wives said that they had his aunt's box, a trunk of stuff with clothing and all kinds of stuff, and they live in Connecticut, and they made contact with the Pittsfield Historical Society, and they're going to donate that box because it has long dresses, I mean, from the late 1800s, I mean. She said, we've been holding on to this, we didn't know what to do with it, and I think that's your point.
Yeah, exactly.
And the historical societies have such great protocols because we had mercantile ledgers from my great grandfather's store from 1840s to
Wow.
1870s. And they had a whole protocol about how they came and got it and what papers we signed and everything to, and then, and for us, they could actually store it in a place that was much safer than in our attic.
Yeah, it's
And one other comment about that, all these little towns that we went through to get to my reunion, like Brooks, Maine, they have a house right there on the main drag.
Yeah.
Brooks Historical Society,
Yeah.
how many towns, little dinky towns, we took the back roads,
Yeah.
they all have houses with historical societies.
Yeah.
And,
they have people that are interested.
Yeah.
yeah, so we need a house.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, in my town in Connecticut, before I lived here, there's the same thing, house converted, and they would have every year a Halloween event for kids. They would have, on each holiday, they would theme the place. So there was a lot of community interaction with the building and a lot of things you could visit and do and historical reenactments. So, it's right in the center of town.
Well, the Conway House is wonderful, or the Thorndike Conway House is wonderful, but it's a museum
Yeah,
and we need an archival house.
It's in a place where people don't really know what it is.
and it's not open very often.
Yeah.
So anyway,
It's really, take a drive to Eastport
Yeah,
and go off the roads and go to any of the little towns, and they all have a little.
yeah,
Some of them are very nice.
yeah.
Some of them are actually historically preserved.
Mhm.
in the little building.
That would be fun.
Bailey Bill, that's.
do you think that, recording oral histories or interviewing citizens who've been here a long time and have some stories to tell, that could be a project that students could do,
Sure.
Absolutely.
high school?
I think it's a great idea.
Really good idea.
yeah.
Here's another aside, I don't know if anybody else looks, but on Facebook, they have one of these groups that all they do is pictures of Maine, or historic pictures of Maine. And one of them is, I think it's Rob Ellis. I think he's from around here, but he has this incredible collection of postcards. And a lot of them from the mid-coast area and all that, but it's sort of fun to.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a great wintertime. It's a great wintertime activity too.
Okay, so moving on, I was just reviewing, article, what is it, 13 that established us. And I just was walking through that and I felt like a review of duties was kind of a worthwhile thing. We can't do it right now, but I don't know that we're exactly duties. Just to make sure that we're actually meeting what we're supposed to be doing, because I thought there's a couple of things that maybe we are not doing. So I don't know when or how we work that into our schedule. We've got enough going on, but I think at some point I'd like to just review that document and say, do we need to modify this anyway, or any things we need to do as a committee to make sure we're serving everything that's in that. And then I just want to ask, so I can imagine the historical preservation ordinance being a committee here within the HRC as we develop it, and I could imagine this archiving project being a committee. And my question is, with a group of 5 members and 2 volunteers, is it silly to subdivide in any way into committees, and is everything all of us? Or would you see it being a smart thing to subdivide a little bit and have maybe 2 members spearhead an archiving project or idea or what have you? I just kind of wanted to take a temperature check on that. Anybody have any
You
thoughts?
can just organize it ad hoc.
Yeah.
I think it's been like people taking on projects like Curtis Island or the walking tour or, you know, plaques, etc. And I think if we want to do, but these are even bigger.
Yeah,
Yeah. And we need more members to really carry that out.
so it seems like, I think you're probably right, it will always be one member's enthusiasm to drive something forward.
Right.
And the committee is just gonna be a kind of a silly,
Unless you
layer.
set up one or two members to do a committee and bring in volunteers
for that specific
that have,
project.
that have specific expertise.
Yeah,
And working under the direction of the 1 or 2 members who've been delegated to that project
it's a great
as a
point.
committee.
Yeah, so I think until the need arises, we're not just gonna create committees for no reason. Okay, great.
But I like the idea of when we're working on when we get to the point in the preservation ordinance that we can use volunteers,
Mhm.
let's use them, you know.
Well, I think that comes down to, again, communicating to the town. First of all, we know we need to, because a lot of people didn't even know we existed and what we do. But if you put a call out for volunteers, that's one way to
Mhm.
get the
Absolutely,
word out.
absolutely.
And name what the specific project is.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, and I think going before the select board and saying, this is what we're doing, here are the question areas, or here are some of the new areas we're going to move in. And that can do a lot, I think, for both getting the understanding of what we do and awareness and, helping with sort of the basic support that.
So maybe there's a conversation with Allison to put us, 2 months down the road, maybe a presentation to the select board, just updating them on what we're doing and
Because
what.
I think when we had done that before a couple of times, and it was always helpful, people were sort of amazed at all the stuff that was going on, they didn't know about it, and
Great,
But we also need to have more of a public image out
yeah,
in the community, like publicity.
Yeah.
Because you can talk to the select board and say, this is what we're doing and this is where we're going, but it doesn't go any farther than them.
So that's another committee for you.
yeah,
Yeah.
all right, so,
Well,
You know,
most of
maybe-
the time when I say I have an HRC meeting and they go, what? And I say, start resources, and they, what was that? You
Yeah.
start resource, what is that?
Yeah.
Nobody knows what it is.
they're not watching YouTube. Okay, so I have some things, these are things I think for future, and I'm just gonna rip through these because we will take too long if we stop and talk through everything there, but I definitely think that at some point we're gonna have to address exactly what you said, community outreach, and some of the things I think that fall under that umbrella are all listed here, but some kind of social media presence. I think it'd be great if the HRC had an Instagram page and we were posting historical photographs or little stories. Maybe a newsletter would be a possibility, or if not a newsletter, then a news column, maybe a once a month, what's happening in the HRC. I thought Pat had a fantastic idea about every time we issue a housing plaque, that we put a picture of that house up and a little story about why this house was awarded a plaque. So it has some prestige and you get, oh, my neighbors are getting these plaques. So I think that's a fantastic idea. Maybe we explore the idea of some kind of event with the library, like historical events. maybe that isn't enough, attraction for that, but maybe we have historians come and do presentations on something like that. Coordinate with Ken to have kind of a HRC lecture series of the library. I don't know if that's a very high priority, but it's another idea. And then, as we talk about this kind of public archiving of documents, how are we gonna give the public access to that or display things? So these are all ways to, I think, have community outreach. We're not supposed to talk about Jacobs Avenue National Historic District application, but I'm keeping it there unless, oh, Chris, yes. Were you raising your hand, Chris? Or were you just stretching? Oh,
Oh, no, no,
Oh.
I was
okay.
reading,
Oh, okay.
I don't have a wall.
Before you move on
Yeah.
to Jacobs Avenue, so Ken gives presentations through the History Center and they're, through the library, and you can tune in at home and look at his slides, and he's done several on shipbuilding and other things.
Mhm.
Maybe we could go through that channel and.
That's what I was thinking too, or at the
Yeah.
very least, he could kind of attach our name to those series, the historical, in cooperation with the historical reasons, just to keep getting our name out there.
Yeah.
Well, don't take on too much. I just don't want you to burn out because
Yeah.
there's a real serious.
Yeah, I hear you.
You
This
can
is,
only do
this
so
is
much.
back burner stuff,
Yeah.
but I just want to
Okay.
keep it
Yeah,
recorded somewhere.
love
Yeah.
the ideas.
Yeah, I love the ideas.
I know that coming down the road, there's gonna be a point where we have to make some kind of public statement about the dams and, so that's just keeping that as a note,
Yeah.
that's something at some point we're gonna make some kind of statement, I think, on that.
After we hear what McGuntacook River thing says.
I mean, I think I feel like that falls under auspices that we have to take some kind of public position, not just from a historical standpoint. We'll get there when we get there, but. Fundraising. I think I have some ideas about fundraisers, but again, that's just listing it here to remember. And then.
Fundraisers
Mhm.
for our committee.
For our committee, also for, I think specifically for for Curtis Island.
Well, I like the
Me too, I can't get it out of my head.
late to light
Mhm.
concept. Opening the year with a swim or a paddleboard from Lake Beach to the lighthouse.
Not,
Late
not,
to
you're
light.
not talking about opening the year.
Yeah, summer.
I thought you said opening the year.
So my
Polar
idea,
bears, huh?
my idea was in the same way that we kind of
Beach
signify the winter here in town with the lighting of the star, and that's kind of the icon that identifies Camden as a winter town. And look at the star, and you can see it everywhere. Wouldn't it be great to have some kind of iconic announcement of summer here in town and have it be connected to Curtis Island, since it is also another iconic thing that is connected to the town, is funded by the town. If there was an event, a kickoff event that kind of says summer has begun in Camden.
Love it.
And so I thought, I came up
But you wouldn't
with.
swim it then. You
What's
wouldn't swim, you wouldn't swim it at the beginning of summer.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Mm,
Yeah, I mean, that's part of the attraction.
Yeah, exactly.
What's
Oh,
the-
Imagine, I told her, yeah, exactly.
What's the
Yeah.
distance?
Or you can
It's
paddle
400
board or
yards, I
canoe.
think it is. 400 yards, or 400 feet, one of the two.
No,
No,
more than 400 feet.
400.
You can get a wetsuit, Ann.
Yeah, no, I mean, I have a friend who wants me to swim the Hellespont and it's like 3 miles and I'm thinking, could this be something to train on?
So,
400 yards.
my very crude idea is that anyone who can get from the beach to the
Yep.
lighthouse by any way means they've
Yeah.
completed the event.
Canoe.
You can canoe, you can kayak, you can swim, however you want to get there.
Walk on
And then
water.
create a yearly pin, which is like some kind of, we have a local artist depict a depiction of Curtis Island or Camden and the year on it. And so you collect these pins year to year.
Oh, it's like.
There's a registration, a $30 maybe registration to do the event. You get to the island, you get the pin, And you just do this every year, and it becomes something like Beta Breakers in San Francisco.
Well, because, Life Flight is not doing theirs.
There, Islesboro.
Yeah,
Swim
and,
anymore.
and I talked to them because I'm raising money for the
For what?
I'm raising money for their fundraiser because a friend of mine's daughter died who had been transported by them twice.
Mhm.
And so it's in her memory. And I'm finding that the whole concept that they have of like you write down what you did. I wrote down what I did in 4 days and I was already number 21 on their list, so nobody's writing anything down.
Yeah.
You know, and this was yesterday, and that's like a third of the way through the month. But they seem to think that that is a great fundraiser for them, so I feel like you're not stepping on their toes. And I think there's much more allure to crossing the water some way than there is to do whatever you want. You can hike, you can swim, you can, kayak.
But I was thinking if we coordinate with Maine Sports and with the local restaurants and hotels, and there's kind of like a discount for meals at certain restaurants and it's staying at the hotel, like turn it into an annual event that becomes, I think it could be.
I'll
And
have-
the tide charts.
Mm.
Tie charts.
I have to say, the other fundraiser thing, which I loved
Which
when I
one
first
do you
got here,
take
was
around
the
the
kitchen tour.
Mm.
Left or to the
Have you
right?
you were here for the kitchen tour? Remember the kitchen tour that Mary
I've
Spring?
done the kitchen tour years past.
And they decided not to do it anymore.
Oh,
And the thing, it was a tour where the restaurants would, like, there would be 2 restaurants, I guess, per
yeah, I've
house.
done it.
Where they would be serving some little
Then
thing
one
at
in
the
the restaurant
restaurant.
in the morning, one in the afternoon.
Right, right. And then you, but you could get into historic homes that way. And, the garden tour isn't even going into very many homes
Yeah.
anymore. So that would be, that was so much fun.
It
And
was.
I would just love for somebody to resurrect that. And since
I
they're
did
not
host
doing it,
that,
we're
yeah.
not stepping on any toes. And you can say it's in
Yeah.
historic houses. I know, but I love this. I would work on this one because it was that was such a fun
Put
tour.
her in
Well,
charge.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so
I definitely would work on that one.
I think these are like really great
Why
projects.
don't I do the kitchen tour?
Okay,
Wait
so
till
then,
my kitchen gets finished and then.
Well, my kitchen is finished, so someone could use my house.
all right, so just 2 more things I wanted to say.
And my house too.
Yeah.
Before we're done, I just wanted to hit 2 other things. Last meeting, we had some discussion around the town website, and I think that could become opening a whole, ball, do you open a ball of wax? I let her know, but,
You're mixing.
can't-
it up.
yeah, I'm mixing some.
Wax can't work.
But I think there's some very simple modifications. I'm gonna talk to Janice about that if you guys are in agreement. But I think there's some very simple things we could do. One, I think we can make sure the information that on there is correct, like names spelled correctly and all that. That's an easy cleanup. But what I would see the Historical Resources Committee website on the town website, I wouldn't want to be anything too robust. I want it to be very scaled back, but I think there should be a positioning statement for the historical preservation ordinance. So whatever we think our top line message about why this is a good thing for the town, that should reside there. I think there should be tools for homeowners about how they can comply with historical ordinance and how they can do historical research on their homes, really make it really simple. So how to participate in the history of Camden. And then a link to our walks and a description and list of the landmarks in town. And push the plaque process, and there should be an email address contact for this committee and a link to our social media, whether that's an Instagram or Facebook or whatever it ends up being. But I don't think it has to be a super elaborate website, and it's not a lot of bandwidth, it's not a lot of storage. And it seems like this is something I might be willing to just kind of take on as a personal project, but
This is in the current town website, just making our own page.
just making it a little bit more than it is right now. Yeah. It's just a place for us to get our top line messages out and to promote this committee.
And so are all of you in favor of Chris taking that on?
Yes.
Great,
Moved and seconded.
thank you, thank you. I gotta remember to say
I
that.
can't vote, but I'm
All right,
support.
thank you. And
You
the
can
last thing, this is the,
I love it.
I feel like there are other people doing this or have just talked about it, but being somebody who's still relatively new to the town, really only had exposure for 3 years now. But one of my entrees into learning about this town was through Barbara Dyer and her books that you will see everywhere. And it feels like a tribute to her, seems like an essential thing, like she was such a prominent figure, and I just wonder if nobody else is taking the lead on doing something that does seem like something that we could at least help along or push. And I just wondered if anybody had any thoughts about that. A naming of something or
She has a plaque,
she does.
yeah,
Okay, I didn't know
which is
that.
over on the building that has, the Bacon Cafe in it.
There hasn't
Where is
already
it?
been a tribute?
Hmm?
How long ago did she?
It's not
Well, it
on
was-
the
I think it
Bacon
was just
Cafe
last
side,
year.
it's that
A year.
thing that keeps
She
changing.
was featured
as you
with
go into
others
the-
on the cover of the annual report.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just seems like something in town should be named after her. I didn't, that seems like an appropriate thing, but.
And you know, her niece,
Mhm,
Elizabeth Moran or Heather Moran,
mhm.
if the committee decided to do something, should talk with them and see what they might think was appropriate or that they would appreciate. But I don't know.
This can remain as another back burner issue that I just kind of keep in the back of our mind, or is this something that you think? You know, we have a lot of things we're talking about
I
doing.
know.
But should we make that outreach now, or is this something, let's wait a year from now? You know, we've got enough other things to tackle. What's people's feeling about that?
I think we should get a little bit more visibility so that, I mean, this sounds very callous, but this would be the kind of thing that we could use to promote us even more. And if we don't have much visibility, it won't have as much impact. So certainly people are honored. I mean, she probably died like 2 years ago at least.
It was less than that,
Less than that?
yeah.
Because I was thinking, it's enough time has passed that if we waited, 5 years after her death, that still would, I mean, that's certainly a
Yeah.
good enough timeline for honoring somebody.
Yeah.
And by then, we might have a mechanism where it's part of some other event or some other.
Maybe this archiving facility is.
Ah,
named after
there.
her,
Yeah,
because her stories would be front and center there.
yeah,
Well,
That's a really interesting idea.
that's good.
that's a really good idea,
Yeah. Do you think it's premature? It is probably premature to talk to her relative. Okay, but it's good to kind of make a mental note. Right, so that's all I've got. Does anybody else have
Really,
anything?
that's all?
I have one.
No more
I
ideas?
just noticed this, that the Bangor Historic Preservation Commission or whatever it's called. They have on their, in their ordinance, it says, click here for more information on members and board vacancy.
Hmm,
Oh.
Right there up.
Ah, okay.
yeah. Okay, well, do we have a motion to adjourn?
yeah.
Second.
Okay, great. Good job, everyone. Thank you.
Good job.